There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
So welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Crucibles. We're so honored today to have Marshall Levin back with us. Marshall, welcome back.
Thank you.
Well, we've talked in the past about, kind of the lessons that you've learned along the way. And one of the things I think you had touched on was the dichotomy of leadership today, that that so many people have a short versus a long-term perspective. And, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. So absolutely. So there are two very different schools of thought. And I'll tell you which one I subscribe to in case you couldn't guess. So I believe very much in the concept of time horizons. And you either play the long game or the short game. Now, if you play the short game, you're looking at, in the for-profit world, and I was in that, quarterly returns, profit, what's the valuation of the company, and if you look at a time horizon of 1 year, you're probably going to close the company in that 1 year. If you look at a time horizon of 3 to 5 years, which is what every business plan is about, then that's, relatively speaking, a long game. The real long game, when I mentioned the Weizmann Institute, the average time it took for a basic research breakthrough to become a life-saving, life-changing drug for improving the quality of life and saving the lives of millions and millions and millions of people all over the world was 30 years. And that's fast. Okay? I'm talking about from laboratory research discovery to drug monetization for the research, the trials, to FDA approval. Okay? So 30 years. That's the long game, but that doesn't mean you're not playing the short game, because, again, in the fundraising world, I and my teams were judged every year, but I always had a 3 to 5 year plan, because it links to the other thing we had talked about earlier, Chief, and that is the difference between relationship-based leadership and transactional leadership. In my case, it was relationship-based fundraising versus transactional fundraising. It's what I call hit-and-run philanthropy. If somebody says, I just got $1 million gift, they say, great, but your goal for the year is 25 million. So I hope you're moving on. I say, well, let's talk about the $1 million gift. In fact, let's talk about the $10,000 gift. In fact, let's talk about the $1,000 gift that came in through direct mail that no one ever even talked to the person. It's all about relationships. And it's, I believe, something that I've practiced, which is personalized philanthropy. So when you mentioned that I've been in the for-profit and the not-for-profit, what's interesting in the not-for-profit is I believe in playing 3D tic-tac-toe. So 3D tic-tac-toe is, from a leadership perspective, there is a professional team, have to manage that team. There is a universe of donors in terms of that fundraising, need to deal with them. But there's also a universe, or it's a cadre of lay leaders. They're the board. They're actually fiduciary responsibility. They're legally liable if there's a misuse of funds, but they need to be part of the strategic brain trust. And so I believe that there's a volunteer career path. I want people to stay at the table for a decade plus as leaders, so that there's institutional memory, what I said before about past, present, future. And that has served me well and my organizations well. But I see a big change now everywhere, which is a celebration of metrics. Now, let's take a look. You see it in sport, you see it everywhere, but um, let's look at the W's and L's. Let's see, it's the same thing as looking at quarterly returns. How are we doing on pace this year versus last year? Well, there was something called COVID, and there was something called, whatever we want to say, that affected that. Uh, that needs to, because of relationships buy time and they deepen. It's going broad and deep versus that hit and run. So I believe that's very important. And in terms of loyalty, meaning, personal commitment that each person employed makes to that goal, I think that is a big measure of what everybody's looking for in their professional career as well as in their volunteer career. The volunteers are there by choice. I think outstanding professionals are also there by choice. They can go somewhere else. So I want them to stay with us.
Yeah, I think your point on the metrics is really important. I mean, if you can't measure it, you can't change it. We know that, and metrics is a really critical element in the business world and anything that we do today. But often what gets lost is the relational piece, and the relational piece is directly related to the culture that we build in our organizations.
Yeah, let me pick up on that. I think it's a mistake for people to look at the long and short game, or the relational and transactional, the measurement, as mutually exclusive or either or. I think it is absolutely a both and. It's not, oh, well, don't look at what's happening now because it's going to be better next year. And as you said, it needs to be monitored and measured, and it's all about response, creativity. What are you going to do? And if you're in a downward spiral or a downward trend, you better make changes or it's not going to work. But to say on that time horizons piece, we were doing very well and now we're not, let's change. I don't believe, whether we're talking about stock investment, financial investment, or frankly, civic investment, that we need to play the long game. We need to be true to the principles and rally people around that. And I go back to, in leadership, it's not a pride of authorship, but a pride of leadership. And I want to just say a word about that. I don't think anybody's better than anybody else. I think we all have a unique view and unique talents and deficits and all of that. But if we're going to play a leadership role, I don't think we should be doing what we think other people think we should do. We need to listen. But my view has been, and I do have a quote on this one, which is, I believe that anybody who needs to consult opinion polls to decide what their principles are has no principles. So when we talk about vision, inspiration, aspiration, leadership, if I'm in charge, I take full responsibility, and as part of the team and listening and all of that. But ultimately, if I'm in charge, I need to sign on the bottom line in blood for whatever's going to happen. And I'm ready to do that. But if they want someone else and a different way to go, then they have that right. But if I'm going to do it, I believe this approach, I believe it's better for the organization. I also believe it's better for any country.
Yeah, and I think your point's well taken about what's just what's going on in our world today. I mean, there's an interesting quote, and I don't know who said it about the politics of the day, but that the politicians are looking at their next election, and statesmen are looking to the next generation. And I think from a leadership standpoint, I mean, the people that are looking at, well, what's going what's the easiest path, or what should I do based upon what the polling is saying, and that can happen in your organization. Well, if you have to make a tough decision, I don't want to make that decision because I know it's going to anger my employees. But sometimes you have to make those tough decisions.
Right. I actually think you always have to, that's predictable. It's going to happen. And ultimately, when we say leave your ego at the door, I've always said that there's a difference between leadership that is ego driven and leadership that is organization centric. And by that, I mean, and this is the honoring history, I think that leadership is stewardship. We're only leaders for the time that we're there. I'm talking professionally as well. But I don't see it as different than nothing's forever. The tag, we're it. This is the time. So what's going to happen on my watch? I think we make those decisions in our personal lives. And certainly talking about this leadership crucible, uh, it's tough stuff. Life's challenging. There are no guarantees on anything. And frankly, there's a greater possibility that any organization or business is going to fail than it's going to succeed. So, and by the way, the odds of that are greatly tilted in the negative direction. So,
Yes.
so ultimately, I think we make a choice between our survival in our position and our leadership impact. Yeah, so absolutely.
So tell me about when we had spoken before about the 150% rule.
Okay. A joke that I made in a job interview 50 years ago, which is hard to believe. I said, I am terminally cause-oriented, but it hasn't killed me yet. And they said, can you tell us more about that? And I said, well, I don't know how to do anything halfway, but I have a problem. And my problem is that I can only work for something that is an exact match between my personal values and my professional responsibilities, because the way I go into something is total immersion. And the total immersion is I won't work for or sell anything that I wouldn't volunteer for, but you're going to pay me. So I want to tell you, I'm going to spend 50% of my time on this and 50% of my time on that. And the other 50% I'm going to spend on this. So that was the 150% rule. So, yeah, I believe that the only way to be an effective leader is to say, I turn the lights on and I turn the lights off. I'm the first person in and the last to leave. And if something is wrong, it's on me to fix it. If there's a fire to answer, I'm going to be the first one leading the way. It's not delegating. It's not, because ultimately it's 150%. You get 150% of me, and that was what it was.
Yeah, and I think the other point you made is really important about value alignment to who you're working for. And I know that in looking at the generation that's coming up, Gen Z, that's just entering the workforce, that's a really critical issue for them.
Absolutely.
They want to work for somebody that they align with value from a value structure standpoint. And I think that Gen Alpha, when they come up, I think they're going to be the same way. So I think we're seeing some transition of the workforce and their expectations, especially coming out of COVID. And it would probably be very beneficial for corporations and companies to take stock in that and start to align their cultures with trying to bring people in that have that their same value structure.
So amen. I agree. I'm watching those trends, and I want you to know that for me, it's giving me a great reason, reality-based, not virtual, reality-based reason for optimism. I do believe that if we take a look at the human condition and human nature, one of the strongest drivers is a need to belong. And when you belong to something that you feel is bigger than you, but that also values you, and frankly, from my joke in the nonprofit world was the most selfish thing you can ever do is to uh, give to and take care of someone else. Because what's so selfish about it is it's going to make you feel so good about yourself. There's nothing else that's going to make you feel that good. And it happens to be true. And I think what you just said about the generations coming and their own view of not just life balance, but life value, the search for meaning, impact personally, that when they can attach to something that makes them feel good about themselves and all the time they're spending in their work, that is about retention and recruitment and all kinds of things. It's also, by the way, that's playing the long game, because that's investing in the best parts of the people who we will employ, bring into the culture of an organization, and then mentor and care for them. That's the payback. That's the pay it forward, I believe.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's reflective of why building our organizational cultures today is it's really, really important. We can't overlook that. So, well, Marshall, you have another part of your life I'd like to explore with you just a little bit, and that's Marshall the athlete. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think the simplest way to say this is I'm probably both an anomaly and an overachiever in a lot of areas. One of them is sports. So I had a health incident when I was 15. And from that, I had to stop playing contact sports. And so I took up a sport seriously, which is called tennis. And so in tennis, I found that when people were given lessons and getting all of the instruction, first of all, it was expensive. I come from, I guess, what we would say the classic middle class family. So that was fine, but no country clubs. In fact, when I got good, I started to wear black socks and hustle people on the public courts. But I was the antithesis of the country club kid. But playing in junior tournaments where I grew up, I was unknown. Everybody had played much younger, and I was a good competitor. So here's the point I'd like to share with you, and the story is an interesting one. So when people got tennis lessons, I would hear about what they did, which is they practice the forehand with the pro with an elliptical swing and meet the ball at this contact point and transfer your weight. And they would learn the forehand, no kidding, for 3 months. And then they'd move on to the backhand. And the backhand would be another 3 months. And they wouldn't do quite as well with the backhand, but then they would go to the serve. And my joke was, oh, so you're going to actually play a game within a year after spending all that money. So I was very much impressed by Bruce Lee and all the martial arts. And Bruce Lee was a philosopher as well. And he made a challenge to the Chinese masters who resented that he had brought kung fu to the United States. And he challenged the Chinese masters to a match, a fight, and he developed something called the 1-inch punch. And he said, I will defeat you within 60 seconds. Now, I thought that was the greatest dare that I ever heard. And so someone knew me and they said, Marshall, I'm going to give you a challenge. Do you think since you've taught yourself how to play tennis, do you think you could teach somebody how to play a game within an hour or a day? And I said, in typical form, I could do it in half an hour. So I came up with something called Kung Fu tennis. I gave from the white belt through the black belt, and it was secrets for excelling in tennis and in real life. And it was a way to teach somebody how to hit the ball with control, forehand and backhand, and play a game within a half an hour. And so I did that. So I ended up I played high school tennis, college tennis, professional tennis, world ranking, coaching people. And this Kung Fu tennis actually has been used in Africa and Cameroon, teaching 20,000 kids, giving them hope through tennis, but also, I am the martial arts master. And what's so funny about that is when I created the martial arts, it was spelling Marshall as my name. We won't go to fire marshals, but it said martial arts master, and it was Marshall spelled my name. So taking that lesson from that, I believe that we don't need to spend as much time on esoteric, ethereal kinds of things. I think it's about translating words and thoughts into action. I see sport as the best example of that.
Yeah. What a story. So, do you have relationships with the school that's teaching in Cameroon?
Yes, I do. Ongoing. Yeah, it's great. And yes, so talk about things that were unplanned and fulfilling and that touch the heart. That's right up there.
That's one of them, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's again, it kind of shows how life, you can't plan life, because you had a situation when you were, a teenager that kind of led you to this path, and instead of feeling sorry for yourself, you actually took advantage in one way, took advantage of it, and moved on. So
Absolutely, opened a great door. Yeah, I mentioned that I had a national education company. And I want you to know that that company that was in school systems across the country, and the slogan of it is "Learning is a team sport." And what I created, not meaning to, was individual and team product development on a shared production schedule that was performed in classrooms from first grade through 12th grade across the country. And it used there was an individual book written by every student, and then a team book that required team decision making, whatever. And then it was delivered to the school and the community with the parents coming in at a championship rally. So the Department of Labor and the Department of Education picked it as the key to the workplace skills for the 21st century. This was at the end of the last century. It's funny to say that, but this was it happened in the 90s. So what I wanted to share from that is watching in the classroom. What I believe is we had a mascot for the company that was called the Smart Part. And the Smart Part was a bird, and the slogan was, "There's a smart part in everyone." And so in the lowest sections in the schools, for the kids who were given up on, it reduced violence, it increased attendance, scores went up on everything. It was quite a wonderful thing. And what I said about this is that the road to product development and a successful project is individual responsibility, where you're in charge of everything. No one can do it for you. So you learn, and a child learns that it's not a straight line to the top. You have an idea, you say, I think it's good. And then as you start trying to translate it into something real and concrete, it's hard, and it's less, it's less impressive than you thought. And the track, and so the graph is, it goes up, then it goes across, then it goes down, and then you say, there's a power of a deadline. I have to do this. 2 weeks from now, there's going to be this championship rally. I have to have my individual. The team's going to do it. I'm working for the team, but I've got to do it. So then there's this huge running to and through the finish line. And what was found about after this program, any child who completed it was then able to accomplish whatever the next project was in any subject in their school, because they said, I did it. So I believe that this all goes back to the walking the talk and whatever, but in sport, as we're having this conversation, the NBA playoffs is going on, and everyone's talking about the difference between how big the stage is and the age of the players, and is it age versus stage, and how nervous are people. In the end, it's going to happen. The statistics will be whatever they're going to be. There's going to be a winner and a loser. But the idea that the people who make it to the finals didn't learn a ton from what it took to get there, and that they did perform, but there's only one winner. So I believe that individual responsibility and team responsibility leads to a positive self-image. And if you have positive self-image based on reality, that I did this, I went through the hard part, I did it, then you're ready for the next challenge. And so I believe that's about grit. It's about how did you handle adversity? How did you handle challenge? But did you come out on the end that you accomplished your goal? And I think that on the most basic level, that's what sport says about things that are transferable skills and lessons for life. But that's what every day teaches us.
Yeah, that's our crucibles that we face in our journeys, and what we do with them, is it will actually dictate the path that we travel going forward. So, and accountability is a big piece of that. Personal accountability. Absolutely. And saying it's nobody's going to solve this but me, and nobody's going to do it but me. So you have to take responsibility for that. So
exactly.
So it's been, we've covered a lot of territory in these segments, and I really appreciate, again, just your insight and your leadership wisdom. But any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience today?
There's one thought that has been going through my mind as we've been talking that I did not expect to share. But I think it has some special resonance, and I'm glad you asked the question. So here it is. I believe that we live in an age of distraction. I think we have distracted driving, distracted listening, and distracted living. And what I believe is in curiosity-driven living. And by that, I mean this intellectual curiosity to hear others' perspectives, to, that joy of discovery and the lifelong learning, try to grab some wisdom from our experience and from other people's experiences. I think that's the essence of personal growth, of civics, of whatever we want to say. And so, when in thinking about this leadership crucible, when I see a movie, when I read a book, when I listen to a podcast, my goal is to get one or two takeaways that are meaningful for me, that I feel, a little aha moment, maybe something I can apply to my life, my work, whatever it is. But I just want one or two. In the classroom, what teachers always say, if I can get to one student in the year and change their life in some positive way, that's why I got into teaching. So I believe in this one or two takeaways. And if that happens, then that was a really good use of my time. So my goal, my hope is that in direct opposition to distracted living, that there's a intellectual curiosity, and what drives people to listen to this kind of a podcast, and what drives you to be able to focus on leadership. I think there's a cumulative impact from the people you will be you are bringing in. Again, I'm flattered to be among them, but there's no silver bullet here. I believe it's a cumulative impact, and everybody should have, I hope, those one or two takeaways, and then it will have been a great success.
Thank you. I think you're right. I think, as we look at the landscape today and in our country, and we've chatted a little bit about this, there is really a leadership chasm that has emerged, and my hope is through this program and others like it that we can kind of realign and refocus on what's important in life, as you have so eloquently alluded to throughout these two segments. So, Marshall, I appreciate you as a friend and as someone who has really made a difference in the lives of others throughout your career and still doing it. And I look forward to the time when we can have you back, and we'll explore some other topics of importance for our next generation of leaders.
With pleasure, I'd be honored, and thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.